as health educators, we are often able to teach people about overcoming unhealthy addictions to food, to behaviors, to relationships, to all of these different habits, where what happens is these habits become addictive. And when there's addictions, whether it's alcohol, whether it's a thought pattern or certain flavors of food, then it's harder to be able to do something different, right? And when someone's addicted, they gravitate to it. They're interested in it. They want to talk about it. They think about it. It's on their mind constantly. And that is something that we often have to address if we want to help someone to transform their life from being sick to very healthy. Well, today, there's also ways that you can understand the science of addiction, and the same things that may bring people addicted to unhealthy things, we can actually be addicted to healthy things like exercise or even learning new healthful things. Today, I want to talk about how to make your ideal clients addicted to your health message. And this is going to be showing how to actually produce brain chemistry in your audience's mind that will help benefit their life, to help them to be able, empower them to focus on your message, hear your story, and to be able to change their life. Because the more that your ideal client is able to listen to you, the more they're able to transform their lives and eventually buy and be able to go through your programs, your coaching. And if you're not able to tie in these emotions, these experiences, tap into the brain chemistry that helps to unlock their focus, their attention, their memory, then it's going to be very hard to transform their life. So today I want to share with you what I call the DOSE method, and it's DOSE. These are the way that you're able to help people to make your content irresistibly interesting, your coaching to be very engaging and memorable. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. The first way is dopamine. You want to be able to create dopamine in the audience, in the brains of your audience. How do you do that? See, dopamine is created by novelty. When there is something new, then the brain starts to remember this. So how does this show up in your content? First of all, if you have a framework, like now I have DOSE, right? Your brain is now hooked to try to figure out, okay, what is the OSE? What's coming next? There's something new. There's colors. There's something to engage you, to help you to want to pay attention. The way that dopamine works in our brain is kind of like a sticky note. It tells our brain, oh, remember that, that's a keeper. And then it lodges it into a long-term memory. Because one thing I've learned from my memory mentor, Jim Quick, who's a world-renowned brain coach, he coaches high performers like Usher, like Barack Obama, different presidents, myself, and other high-level entrepreneurs. And one of the things that I learned from him is that information plus emotion equals long-term memory. So in the education space, it's powerful, but in the selling space, information could be a buying belief. It could be a selling statement. It could be a belief that when believed, it will educate your audience closer to a sale. So there's persuasive points that you want to make in your content. Well, that persuasive point plus information equals long-term memory. And the more that people are able to remember your persuasive presentations, then that will help them to shift their identity, shift their beliefs, help empower them to be able to take advantage of your offers, your program, your advice. So novelty is something that will produce dopamine. And this is something that our dopamine receptors are actually able to get hit when you're sharing new ideas with people. The amazing thing about dopamine is that it doesn't even necessarily have to be new on the face of the planet, that no one on earth has ever heard it before. It just has to be new to your audience. So one of the things when I'm coaching health educators so often is I teach them to identify a new way. In fact, we've got videos on our YouTube channel that go into more detail. Instead of just expressing your concepts and ideas, you always want to be contrasting. In fact, I believe we talked about it last week on our channel, is that you want to contrast these old ways that were not being effective, that didn't work, that people tried, maybe like eating salads without dressing, or the oatmeal or doing heavy exercise, all these like methodologies and ways that people try to say lose weight or feel great or have more energy that don't work. Maybe it's like just like coffee in the morning where you get the jitters, but it's not sustainable, and then you got the crash, and then you're addicted to that. You got those caffeine that is making your brain just kind of like hurt and have headaches when you come off of it. So you might contrast it to saying like adaptogens is a way to have more energy without the crash. Adaptogens help your brain to grow better. And so instead of just saying, oh, you need this adaptogen, you show them what they don't need, what they need can stop, what are all the expenses they're able to cut the cost of. This makes your method feel something fresh. Like we had a car salesman who was drinking a Rockstar a day, every day for several years. And then he got on our superfood nutrition system. He started taking some of our adaptogens, and he was able to save like $300 a month just on Rockstars, these energy drinks that allowed him to carry his energy through the day. So those types of stories are able to help contrast, and it presents your message as something new. If you want, there's 2 commandments of content creation. The first commandment of content creation is thou shalt not be boring. You are never going to bore your audience into buying. And boring content doesn't sell. And if you want to be boring, just think about it this way. Take whatever solution you want to help people with, whether it's digestion, whether it's weight loss, whether it's more energy, whatever the solution, the problem that you're solving in the marketplace. Think about what does your audience expect to hear about how to solve that problem, and then go teach them that. That is how you will ensure that you are boring, irrelevant. People will tune out. They will stop listening to you, and they're not going to buy. So you don't want to teach mainstream health advice. Even if the ideas you believe and hold are mainstream, you got to learn how to teach them in a new way. And I'll tell you how you could do that in a moment. First great commandment of storytelling, of content creation, is thou shalt not be boring. The second is like unto the first. And that is, thou shalt never, never break the first commandments. Because no matter what we do, we always want to be able to engage people. And just like what we just did is sometimes to present something new is if you just break expectations. Just see, kind of like how I did before, is you were probably expecting another commandment, right? And that is a commandment. But it's to emphasize that boring content people don't bore, you're never going to bore your audience into buying. Boring content doesn't sell. So in order to retain their attention, you have to keep their attention long enough for them to actually listen to your message so that they'll want to buy what you have to offer. Because if your content's boring, then you might have the most incredible methods in the world. You might have the most life-transforming message that really matters. But if you can't retain their attention by violating their expectations, presenting maybe even old ideas in a new way, then then you won't actually have their eyes and the ears of your ideal clients. So you want to be able to hook their attention long enough for them to listen. And then once they click your video, it's not over. I like to think about it value per second. I want to make sure that every second that someone's watching me, there's increasing value, that they are going to be interested in re-engage, re-hooked. You have the hook and then you have re-hooks. That's going to introduce them again and maintain their attention. So this is something we want to get used to. But we talked about how to share old ideas in new ways. The good news is any idea can easily be shared in a new way or a methodology. In fact, this is what Jesus did. In Matthew 13:34, the scripture says that whenever Jesus was speaking to the multitude, he was, it says, without a parable, he spake nothing. So it's these persuasive he had a pouch of persuasive parables that whenever he's giving a teaching point, he's not just giving an idea, he is packaging every principle in a parable. And just by virtue of turning your principles into stories, what you will do is you can share maybe an eternal principle that's been around for a long time. It's not new, it's old, but by making it a personal story of your experience of how you learned it or what you experienced before learning that principle, or the hardships or the trial or the struggle, or maybe a client that you worked with who was having a hard time and then they understood, oh, this is work. So I'll give you an example. We're talking about content creation. There's been seasons where I'm like, I want to create content. I want to max out my schedule. I want to just focus. I want to batch a whole bunch of stuff, and I'll go content. And sure, I might be able to get some content out for a little bit, but then it falls off and it's not as sustainable. And I wonder why, what's going on? So I could say that, or I could share that I remember there was a time where I wanted to do some push-ups, and in doing push-ups, I found that it was hard. I couldn't do 20 of them. So what I did is I started with one. And as I started with one push-up, the next day I would go to 2. The third day I'd go to 3. The fourth day I'd go to 4. And I started to work my way up through the push-ups. And before that, so many times when I wanted to do push-ups, I do like 20, or I start out with 30, and my arms would be so sore for like 3 days. They're in a lot of pain, and I couldn't even do another set of push-ups the next day if I wanted to, because I was so intense with the exercise that I wasn't able to sustain it. So there's been several times where I would start the push-ups and then stop them, start them and stop them, and years go by in between. So it wasn't really working. But the first time that I decided to do one push-up more each day, I was finally able to do like 55 push-ups in 55 days. And for the first time, I was able to break personal records that I have not been able to do for like 14 years. So that was something that I was so excited about. And you know what I learned from that experience? Consistency beats intensity every single time. And it's the same way with content creation. It's consistent telling your stories, practicing sharing dopamine, practicing introducing new ways. It's consistency beats intensity every single time. Instead of trying to max yourself out, clear your schedule, just try to focus and do everything you can all at once. And it's not sustainable. Because if you're going to build a business that outlasts your day, your time, and is able to leverage beyond yourself, then we need to have consistent systems in place. Follow strategies that actually work, a proven process that's able to help walk us step by step. Does that make sense? You see how that principle of consistency is a very old way. It's not something new, but by wrapping it in a personal story, it feels new to you automatically, because probably none of you have ever heard my story about doing push-ups. And there might be other people who teach a similar concept, but they don't teach it through my story. So automatically, I have a new way to teach an old idea. Every story that you would every concept, every statement, every statistic, every research, all these selling story statements, all of these persuasive points can be packaged in a personal parable that nobody else has experienced. So we have on Skills Unlimited AI Studio, we have which is the world's first and only AI-powered copywriter specifically designed to help holistic health educators monetize their knowledge online. And it's our proprietary AI studio that we've built for health educators like you. And in there, we have the story selling sandwich maker that literally can take everyday, mundane, boring stories and turn them into marketing assets that you can share your persuasive points and overcome buying objections, educating people closer to sale. And these are ways that you're able to relate with them and illustrate a persuasive point, which is really powerful and actually brings us to our second concept right here. Is oxytocin. So in dose, oxytocin is all about, this is known as the connection hormone. This is where you're building connection and community. If your content, instead of just speaking about content, you want to turn your content into community, your people into a message, a mission that is beyond just yourself. So we talk about having a mission that you are starting with. We do this often with an origin story. An origin story is how you originally learned the new way. You're able to do this by sharing relatable stories. What kind of stories? Relatable. And why do I say relatable? Because Your origin story is not when you were 2 years old and the first time that you started to learn how to walk, and my origin story goes back to when I was born. No, that's not your origin story at all. Your origin story, contrary to popular belief, is actually you want to begin your story exactly where your audience is right now. Because a lot of times we begin telling stories where we are today or way too far in the past. But we tell stories from a place of our experience and how we are now, and we gloss over a lot of like jargon. We throw out these large terms that people don't fully understand, and it's hard for them to wrap their heads around. And we lose the audience because they don't know what we're talking about. So what you want to do is you want to, or sometimes we're so far distant from the audience that it's hard for people to relate. And they're like, yeah, you could do that because you're Dr. Joyce. You can do this because you've been doing this for decades, but I'm just getting started. So you want your stories to be ordinary enough that people can relate to you. And that is that common ground. It's that common ground that builds trust. And here's a quick tip. People will relate more first on your pain than they will on your successes. People don't care about your successes until they could relate with your pains. So starting with the challenge, the difficulty, the cost, the expense, the frustration that fueled your discovery of your new way, or this new way of thinking, or this perspective on life, or how you believe differently. So this is, you want it to be relatable, and it doesn't even have to be your experience. If you're solving a problem that's helping people with a problem that you haven't necessarily personally solved, but you've gone on a journey and you know that you could help people like reverse diabetes, but you've never had that, then tell your story about when was the first time that you realized, say, that inflammation is the key cause to type 2 diabetes and a lot of the symptoms. If you could, when was the experience? Was it you attended an event? Was it that you worked with a series of patients and you saw that they all had one thing in common? By eliminating their inflammation, it eliminated so much of their pains and sufferings. And maybe there was a pattern that you saw that got you disillusioned with the mainstream medical advice or methods of surgery, procedures, drugs that just mask the symptoms. Like, what was when did you originally come to the conclusion that the main way that people handle it is not the best way, and instead there's an alternative method, a new way that can be a lot more effective? That's your origin story. It doesn't even have to be, oh, I was fat, sick, and nearly dead, and then I found this awesome method, and now I'm healthy. It could be of you working with other people, or it could be something you've observed, something you watch, and you realize an epiphany or an experience that maybe a doctor went on, and the troubles that they face the mainstream way, and then they found good success with something else. That's part of your origin story, and that's what you tell to people. So you want to relate to people. Because when you start where your audience is, with their beliefs, with their psychology, with their understanding, then you begin your stories there. Because now you're creating a bridge with your stories that helps to take them from where they are to where they to become the person who could say yes to your offer, who could say yes to your programs. So you want to make it relatable. And in connection, this is where you're able to, and this is actually what a client of ours, Regine, she's known as Mommy Mango online, and she this week she just got another $3,000 client in her coaching program, because one thing we've been working with her on is how to build community, how to create this oxytocin. It's where people feel that connection with you, where you build that community. And one thing that I didn't understand for so long is that when you're creating content, it's not about your health message, it's about a community. It's about a movement. You're not just a health messenger, you're a health movement maker. And movements are formed on the back of a mission. There's a mission that's greater than yourself. So I tell people when I'm being interviewed on podcasts, I'm not just a man with a message, I'm a man on a mission to empower holistic health educators to get their message out to the masses so they could literally save the lives of the people they're called to serve. And I share part of my origin story reveals a deeper why behind what I'm doing. And that's like, I had a heart attack when I was 12. And because one man with a health message who learned how to monetize his health knowledge and put it into a book and a program and then sold that program to my mother, that I'm alive to tell the story. And I didn't become another statistic. So I want to help more people like him, like you, to be able to get your message out to the masses. And notice that with this mission, now we've got a commission. We've got something that people can get behind. Now this is something that people are like, I want to join on that. And when people share my videos, they want to go share videos. They want to grab the links. They want to invite other people. They want to refer their friends, because they see that this is part of a movement we're creating. And hey, even a tiny movement can still make a huge difference. A lot of times it's the small hinges that swing open the largest doors of opportunity for other people's lives and for yours. So this mission-centered message is really powerful, and it creates oxytocin. It creates community, and when you are triggering these different brain chemicals that are coming up, it makes people want to continue to listen to what you're saying. In fact, what I learned from Myron Golden, I paid him $55,000 to join his inner circle that's showing people how to sell from stage and how to create content that converts and sell premium value offers. And one thing that he shared again and again is that people buy for one reason and one reason only: because they feel like it. Your job is not to get people to buy your stuff. Your job is to create an environment with your message that helps people feel like saying yes to your offer. Because to create buying behaviors, we need to create buying emotions. What are the emotions that lead high-paying health clients to say yes to your programs at $3,000, $5,000, even $10,000? There are these emotions that are connected with it, and that's what I'm going through right now. This is how you can create the emotion in your content, in your message. If you're doing a health nugget, if you're doing a podcast interview, if you're speaking at a live event or a conference, if you're recording videos online, if you're doing short videos on TikTok, wherever it is, you want to convey emotion, and these are the emotions that matter most. So the O stands for oxytocin. You want to give them a dose of how their brain is actually wired to perceive information. The third actually, is serotonin. Why serotonin? Serotonin is connected with status and significance. With this status and significance, you want to help your audience to feel important as they're listening to your content, because what you have here is an example is like, when in our signature speech, one of the things that we would share with people is often I would do a training on the telomeres, which are the tips or the caps of your chromosomes, that as you age, these protective caps, they get shorter and shorter. And where we have a program that helps to support the telomeres to lengthen them. And telomeres aren't really known by very many people. Few people knew about them, especially about 10 years ago while we were sharing it far and wide. It's become more popular now, but there's hardly anyone knows about them. The doctors didn't even know. You can go to most doctors and say, hey, what's a telomere? And they're like, I don't know. And because so few people, medical professionals, understood anything about the telomere science and how it works, then that's something that is easy to produce serotonin, because we let people know. Now at the end of this presentation, we're giving all this science and background about telomeres, how to lengthen it, and what shortens it, like stress and toxins and poor nutrition. These things will shorten your telomere, which shortens your quality of life. It shortens your lifespan. And we tell people, you now know more than 95% of the doctors that are out there. What we're teaching you is more advanced than even the textbooks in the medical schools, because they're not keeping up with what we're sharing on this telomere research. And this is backed by Nobel Prize winning research. And we've actually got the team of researchers who are contributing to this knowledge base, and we're simplifying it for you. Most of the people who know this stuff, they don't know how to simplify it. They're like researchers and heavy scientists, but they don't know how to express it to the masses. So by letting them know that you now know more than 95% of the doctors or 95% of the people out there, this also increases significance. You're like, oh, there's this important knowledge, this insider knowledge that I have access to. That's really powerful. Another way that you're able to create serotonin is by taking a reporter approach, because maybe in your fields, you have access to mentors of yours, or maybe you have access to peers or colleagues or individuals that are very advanced in different fields of natural healing. And as in healing, maybe you've had private conversations with people that others can't really have access to with other naturopathic doctors or holistic health educators or influencers. And by having this insider knowledge, you're able to be a reporter, like a secret teller. You're like, I'm going to pull back the curtains of what some of my health mentors have taught me through the years, or in these 10 years of experience, or when I was a missionary over in China, where they have been able to make a health center in my name because of the impact we've done. One of the lessons that we found is, and when you're telling stories from these really specialized experiences that only you have been able to experience, and what you're doing is you're not hoarding it to yourself, but you're saying, I'm freely giving this to you. So now you're able to have an insider knowledge. Or I've interviewed 20 of the top brain specialists, or 20 of the top health educators, best-selling authors on the topic of inflammation, or on the topic of digestion. And these are what all 20 of them have in common, these same 3 things. Now people tune in. They want to listen. They're like, whoa, tell me more. I got to find out what's going on here. So this serotonin is where you're able to help people to feel that there's significance, there's insider knowledge, there's something more here. Another way that you can do this is in your offer, you can give exclusive bonuses. What's really powerful, and I don't see a lot of health educators doing this, is many times when you're creating an irresistible offer that high-paying health clients love to buy, then it's really about the bonuses. The bonuses will bring buyers more than even the core offer. And what I mean by your core elements of your offer, let's say you want to sell a program that is teaching about like healthy mind and body. And in the healthy mind and body is your core program. That's $3,000. Cool. What you want is your core offer to be like the bare bones, a skeleton, just the basic outline of what they're going to get. And for $3,000, they're getting healthy mind and body program. And that's going to help them to get that initial results. But you want to be able to stack bonuses that are so juicy, so irresistible, so intensely interesting, that with every bonus you introduce, you're sharing that when you buy Healthy Mind and Body for free, you're going to get this exclusive bonus. This bonus, you cannot buy this bonus anywhere else. It's not available. It's only in this program here. That shows a level of exclusivity. And when you're able to craft an offer that you're sharing in a particular time, where they do have time-sensitive bonuses, where truly it's impossible for them to get elsewhere, this creates serotonin that people want to buy. This will help them to create the buying emotions, because there's few things more powerful than true, genuine scarcity, meaning there's a limited amount or limited access or limited time frame, and then urgency. That's like, hey, this is available right now, and it's not going to be available before. So by being able to give exclusive bonuses, and we have in our AI studio, in Skills Unlimited AI Studio, we have an irresistible offer creator. In our AI studio, you just answer a couple questions and it will help you to come up with these exclusive bonuses that you could add to your offer to make it so much more interesting and desirable. So those are ways that you can create serotonin when you're speaking. Another final way, the E stands for endorphins. So you see DOSE stands for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Endorphins are powerful. This is that feel-good chemical. This is where when people, like the scripture says in Proverbs, that a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. So one of the ways that you can you can produce endorphins is, first of all, you want your brand to be associated with positive emotions, with happy emotions, emotions that are encouraging. If you are, and one way you can do that is with humor. And humor is really powerful, that you're able to communicate with people. There's been studies that have shown is that people, when you laugh with others, you're instantly more relatable. People lower their guard when you're able to be funny or help people laugh or relate to them. And you could use like self-deprecating humor, for instance, where you're able to tell a story and you just laugh at like the universal human experiences of what it's like being here. Another example, you can have signature jokes, which is very helpful. I teach my clients a lot about having signature stories, but another thing you could do is have signature jokes. You want to be intentional about having these lines. One thing that you'll find about when you're a super student of successful health educators who sell from stage, you'll notice that they have their messages is scripted. Their messages is very timely. There's a sequence to it. There's an intention behind it. Like for instance, there is a study that was done. Harvard did a study on rats, and it was featured by Diane Sawyer, who's very popular and credible for a lot of people's mind. And she's talking about how this study was by activating their telomeres. There's a study in rats that their brains actually got better. Well, before they were balding, but then their hair got a healthy sheen to it, and their memory improved. It's like you see before with someone with like severe Alzheimer's to then becoming very like healthy and functional, and the cognitive functions improve. So Diane Sawyer is saying all this stuff, right? So what we'll do is we'll put the small brain and the big brain on a slide, and we'll say, look, by supporting their telomeres, it actually increases a brain. And we'll say, do you know anybody who needs a bigger brain? And then people are able to laugh, and it's kind of funny, and they're like, yeah, I need a bigger brain, or I know a couple people who could use a bigger brain. And that's a signature joke. It makes the audience laugh every single time when you're able to go through that experience. And other times when you're asking, let's say, enrolling questions, which what are enrolling questions? Those are questions usually you say in the beginning of an audience, a beginning of a message where like, how many people want more energy? How many of you want to feel better in your 40s than you ever did in your 20s? Yeah? Can I see a show of hands? Or you could say, how many of you have ever experienced, and then you're basically asking these questions that will create yes momentum, or that will help people to continue to say yes, they're enrolling into your message. You're building this momentum of when you're having a conversation with them, you're getting them to move and engage. And by creating that movement also produces brain chemistry like endorphins. Endorphins are created by movements. And this not only engages your audience and helps to create yes momentum, which if they're constantly saying yes throughout your presentation, then when you make the offer, they're going to have that yes momentum. They're more likely to say yes when you present your irresistible offer and all your exclusive bonuses. But if you've just been talking at your audience, there's no engagement, no interaction, then they're not as likely to buy. When you make your offer, then what are they going to do? Continue, because the law, there's selling, there's a science of selling, and just like the laws of motion say, an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by another force. That's the law of momentum. The law of inertia says an object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by another force. So when you're creating, you don't want your audience to be at rest where they're not actively engaging or commenting or speaking up or saying yes. Like, does this make sense? So if they're at rest, if they're in inertia, and then you present your offer, and then what do you want them to do? You want them to take action. You want them to be in motion. You want them to move or do something. Stand up, go to the back of the room. You want them to fill out a form. Why are they going to fill out a form when you just train them for however long you've been talking to do nothing? So then when you present their offer, guess what they're going to continue to do? Nothing. So as you see, like even as I just explained to you, there's a science to selling. And as I shared with you how science can show how to sell more from stage, that creates dopamine in the mind. That shows an old idea in a new way. When you're able to share some of these scientific ways, it creates dopamine where people say, wow, I didn't know that. That makes sense. So these are simple ways to help people. And what happens is when you share something insightful like that, your audience will feel that, well, if they know this much about like this science, or if they know something more about telomeres, or if they know something more about inflammation, then how much more do they know about other things? It automatically builds more of a trust or a belief or credibility in their mind, in the back of their mind, where they're more willing to hear what other things you have to say as well. So we're talking about producing endorphins, and you want your content that when people come in contact with your brand, they feel encouraged. You want people to walk away from your message saying, I could do that. That's always the goal. I heard that from a millionaire mentor of mine. He was making $3 million a year in his health education business. And he's like, every time you speak, you want people to walk away saying, I could do that. And when I heard that, I'm like, that makes so much sense. I could do that. And part of it is by helping people to give them hope. Because as leaders, we are hope dealers. How many of you like to give hope to the hopeless? How many of you like to have people feel encouraged, right? And then here's another signature joke. Well, okay, and if you maybe don't like giving people hope, but how many of you know someone who likes to give hope to the hopeless, right? And then how many of you wouldn't raise your hand no matter what I said? Like, raise your hand. And then people start raising their hand. And that's what I mean by like a signature joke. I saw someone do that in an audience before, and I was like, the whole audience was laughing, and I was like, wow, what just happened? That was brilliant. You can do it like a swap file. You could replace how many of you insert whatever. Like, how many of you are plumbers in here? Yeah? How many of you know a plumber in here? How many of you wouldn't raise your hand no matter what I said? And that joke makes people laugh. It produces endorphins, and it's a signature story. You could share it. It's a really great way to recover a live audience who's not engaging or not saying anything. Or maybe you ask and there's a few people who raise their hand because maybe that question didn't land, or maybe they're busy, or maybe they're not used to or trained to interact yet. So by training the audience, you're able to say, okay, how many of you know someone who wants more energy, or has done many different diets in the past and it didn't work for them? Or how many of you know someone who's diabetic or in pain? And then that's going to get a larger portion of the audience. And then you drop in the punchline, how many of you won't raise your hand no matter what I say? And then all those jokesters, they start raising their hand. But hey, guess what? You got them to raise their hand. And now you're creating more yes momentum. In motion, now there's an audience in motion, stays in motion, unless acted upon by another force. What would be another force in this context is repelling statements. Because honestly, every word you say, every question you ask, every story you tell, every statistic you share is either selling someone closer to saying yes to your offer, or it's repelling them away and leading them to say no to your offer. Those are repelling statements that you might build yes momentum, where they're saying, yes, 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 this is exciting. And then you say a comment like, you need to start counting all these calories, and you're gonna have to change all of these different nutritions, and all your favorite foods you can't have anymore, and your diet's gonna be totally different, and you gotta wake up at 4 a.m. every day to punish yourself in the gym. And when you're giving them this big long list of all the stuff that they gotta change all at once, it becomes exhausting. Those can be repelling statements, depending on how you frame it. And but there are repelling statements that when people believe, then they will stop. They won't be able to continue. And you want to share selling statements. What are selling statements? You want to focus not on the process, you want to focus on the payoff. What do they get when they apply your new way, when they apply the principles you teach? The selling statements are going to be, what is the problem that you are solving? What's the pain that they are going to stay in, that they're currently experiencing if they don't change, or the costs of inaction? Those are selling statements. And then what is a payoff that they're going to get when they do change? And these are the things that you want to instill with the principles you share. So endorphins are created when you are joyful, cheerful, when you're able to make people laugh, and use humor in your business. Use humor in the message that you share, because as you do this, it'll make a big difference. So if you want to make your content addictive, if you want to share your message in a way that people pay attention and they actually pay with their money, and they want to continue to show up and share your content with other people, if you want right habits to become habitual, to be addictive to good things, to healthy things, then focus and learn, be intentional about providing them a dose of good health, a dose of good ideas. And with dopamine, by sharing new concepts, oxytocin by creating community and connection building relatable messages, and serotonin so that they feel significant, it feels important, the message that you're able to share. And then endorphins, where they're able to laugh or enjoy or feel hope or be encouraged when they listen to you. You're not going to shame them into buying, you're not going to guilt them into doing good. So by helping to be their cheerleader, to cheer them on, to give them that accountability, but still able to empower them to say yes. I don't think people need to be convinced. People don't need convincing. They need to be empowered to make the decision that they already desire, that's in their best interest for their reasons. And with the right dose of endorphins, then they could start making those decisions. So if you want help with creating a message that can move the multitudes to buying or getting your health message out to others, then every month I actually go live in my High Income Health Expert Challenge. And in this challenge, I'm able to walk you through how you can monetize your health knowledge online. And for a few days, we're going to get together. You could join online backstage. Just go to the link here at the bottom, highincomehealthexpert.com, and there you could ask me any questions you have about your business, about your message, about your offer. Maybe you want help with knowing what exclusive bonuses to provide. Maybe you want help to know how to craft your origin story in a way that people want to buy. And if you are looking to charge a price for your health advice, then go to the link below, link in the description, because it's free to attend. And if you want to go into the backstage or the VIP, then it's only $49. And for $49, you have access to be able to get all your questions answered. It's really powerful. And we like to roll out the red carpet to keep it small with a few people so we could really address what you're looking for. And it's not going to be, we're going to be lost in a crowd with a sea of all these people. We're going to actually pay attention and get to know your business and what your goals are and where you want to go. And there's a ton that we can do together. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we release new videos like this each week. And I look forward to seeing you. But until next time, remember, friends, God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Have a great day, and God bless.